1 year ago, I made a video saying, hey, is Rai going to destroy the jungle forever? The changes they brought forth were weird and strange, and honestly, this season has been weird and strange. But for Season 15, those things are about to change, and I think they just might be cooking the right kind of steak. One made of grubs, heralds, barons, and a new darkened monster. Now, this will change quite drastically our jungle macro, so a lot of people were asking, what do you exactly think about this? What's it going to change? I've already created a map for you guys to show you how it's going to work. Let's just jump into it and then we'll assess what it means for you as junglers and what you can kind of already work on to prepare yourself. So I'm not going to go into the thematic stuff. We're going to go through this very quickly into the dynamic map where I want to actually talk about how this will change your jungling. But effectively, we're back to one split. You do your placements in January, the season ends 12 months later, and then we reset. All of the weird split stuff that we're going to see, this stuff that you're seeing, this has nothing to do with ranked. This is purely for thematics and how the map is going to look and other sorts of things they're going to do. Like, this is what the map's going to look like in the first split of the year, but ranked will not be changing throughout the year, okay? So for junglers, this is what we're going to have happen, and it's kind of nutty, okay? Overall, Noxus has taken over everything, so it's going to look different, such as life. However, the big thing is that they're bringing in this monster, and I'll show a few B-roll clips here and there from the right video. Basically, they're bringing in this new monster in a 20. Baron is no longer gonna be here at 20 minutes. That's right, it's changing for the first time ever. So, Atakhan spawns at 20 minutes and can appear in the river close to either top or bottom lane. Which side he spawns on will depend on which side has seen more champion damage and kills by 14 minutes. And as you know, that's when Herald spawns, right? At 14 minutes, Atakhan's pit will spawn with 2 permanent walls to carve out this territory, and this will signal where he'll appeal for players, so you can kind of understand, all right, he's going to be top side, he's going to be bottom side. Now, that already is quite a lot of shift for us, but most importantly, I'm interested a little bit in the fog of war dynamics around those walls and how that changes making picks and split pushes in the mid game, just as a little side note there to think about. But this isn't all there is to Atakhan. The amount of champion damage and kills done in the game so far will also affect which of the 2 forms the demon takes on. As you all know, I enjoy my demon. In a higher action game, you'll see a ruinous Atakhan, and if you take him down, you will permanently be granted increased effects from all epic monster rewards, and he'll leave behind a field of blood roses for anyone nearby to collect. So before we get into the blood roses, remember this means a buff to anything you get, from the grubs to the dragon. And if you do need a little bit of help with some of these general things going up to that point, I will be updating my courses and everything. We're having a huge up to 90% Black Friday arcane sale going on for the next couple of days, so don't forget to head to Virkayu.gg and have a look at all of the courses, coaching VODs, private Discord community, basically everything you need to improve as a jungler, all for a fraction of the cost as per normal. Enjoy the sales, and let's get back to what were we talking about. Yes. So if you can snack 6 grubbies, and that's also going to change a little bit, by the way, you're going to have a lot of boosts. Now, the blood roses that you pick up here, this will also show across the map. It's another plant that we have. They will act as a minor but permanent bonus you can take for your own team and deny the enemy team. Something all of us high-level junglers, and that's all of you, right, like to do. We'd like to deny things to the enemy. They grant your entire team a small amount of experience and a permanent stacking adaptive force buff. I like XP, makes up for the loss of XP on ward clearance, and adaptive force is good on basically anybody. Blood roses can spawn before 20 minutes though, and do so around areas where champions have died or around Atakhan's spawn location, right? So those plants, everywhere they shall be, and upon his corpse they shall rise. That was weird, but we'll go with it. In addition to, as a reward for killing him. Now that's ruinous Atakhan, right? The 2 different kinds. But back to Atakhan's other form, in a lower action game, you'll see Voracious Atakhan. And if you manage to take him down, your entire team will be granted a temporary one-time rebirth buff. Now, insofar as I've seen the guys talk about it on Twitter, it's basically you're going to have this guardian angel thing, which makes you respawn in base. It takes you back to base. That mechanic, we don't need to really talk about because we're not sure how that's going to work exactly when they release it. But basically, you are granted, hey, enemy kills you. Yeah, they don't get golden experience. You just end up back in base, right? So it's like a go back to base wooden spoon slap as opposed to you actually dying. Kind of like Akshan's passive, except, you know, without the experience and gold given away. And of course, you get a permanent increase to gold from champion takedowns, which would help give teams that extra push to take that team fight. And of course, this is the big one. Yes, obviously having Guardian Angel and Akshan passive is great and denying things is great, But if you get this voracious Atakhan in a game with lower kills and lower sort of snowballing potential, this will give you an increase in gold every time you take down a champion afterwards, which means every time you win a team fight, you are getting exponentially stronger compared to how you would otherwise, right? So how's that going to dominate our mid to late game phase? With Atakhan, we wanted to create an important gameplay objective that allows players to participate more in shaping a story unique to each game on Summoner's Rift. A little poetic for, the battle of minds that goes on, but such is life. Both teams' actions, their choices to fight or not, and where and when they do will determine Atakhan's location and form. Our goal is for this to ultimately bring more variation to each game of League in a way that will help it feel different each time. Paraphrasing, or shortening, or saying it differently. That's exactly what I think is going to happen, and this is why. And as a minor note, and this is what I disagree with, they think this is a minor note. I'm like, this is a huge note. In order to make room for Atakhan's Rift Herald, spawn time has been pushed back to 16 minutes. And Baron Nash's spawn time has been pushed back to 25 juicy ones. We don't want games to last longer than they do today, and we'd make changes if we see that's the case. Typically, teams aren't taking Barons at 20 minutes when they spawn. Of course, if you follow my content, and you're in my private Discord, we often talk about being able to sneak away those early Barons, especially if you're kind of fed and you only need one other person. So, there is a correlation between MMR and when a Baron is taken. And so we think there's room for another powerful mid-game objective that is more realistically claimable in Atakhan. Let's go to the map. Okay, let's just have a quick chat about this because, got my Photoshop custom map here. Here we got the two Atakhans, right? I forget which is which, but I'll assume this is the losing one and this is the super winning one. But it could be either way. So, that might change. Doesn't really matter. There are two versions of Atakhan. So, normally, as we know it, right, at 6 minutes, you can have a Viego and everyone fisting over these grubs. All right, cool. Maybe the Kayn is doing the dragon. Highly unlikely that champion takes dragon very slowly. Then we come back and we take these again, and at 14, we have the Herald, right? Yay, that's a really big Herald. We have the Herald. And at 20, we have the Baron. What's going to change here with this shift? What's going to change here with the shift is really interesting because 5 minutes, we're going to have this one. Now, again, what if you have a Bel'Veth, and let's just say a Grace for argument's sake. We'll use a blue pen here for the Bel'Veth. And she's trying to do the invades here, and Graves is fisting. They're fighting over this zone, right? What happens very often here is that maybe they both die and they go back to base. And maybe this has already been snacked away. So the fight is over these, the fight is over these grubs, right? We want these grubs to be snacked, but say they're taken now at, let's just say 9 minutes. A lot of stuff is happening. Someone takes them at 9 minutes. Bel'Veth finally gets you. It's a bad Bel'Veth. She finally snacks these up. You're not going to have that 4-minute respawn timer to maybe set up for those second ones, which means oftentimes you'll see 3-0. Not oftentimes, but enough times you'll see 3-0 in chaotic games. Because Herald is being pushed back to 60 minutes, you're going to see more of a fisting over later grubs. Maybe people sacrificing grubs knowing they can still get 6. That's an interesting thing to discuss, right? Secondly, when this spawns at 60 minutes now, we imagine a late game, can this not happen? We imagine a late game environment where you've got your junglers looking to actually do a lot of stuff, and normally our teams have now moved around the map. Maybe they're moving into the mid lane, they're moving to the top lane, bottom lane is now, the top lane is down here. The chess pieces, are moving, right? Everyone's moving around the map. What this means now is there's no obvious 40-minute place to be. If you take the regular grubs at 6 minutes, I said 5, at 6 minutes, and then you go ahead and take the second ones at, 10, 11, whatever it may be, you got a long time between that and Herald spawning. And so a lot of pressure is going to be on junglers like this Kindred saying, okay, I can't take this right now. Can I get more in his face? Can I go more top lane? Or is this just completely siphoned off? Maybe this is where I can go. Maybe we can force this. So there's going to be a lot more focus, and I hope this is the message you take from this, on actually being able to snack these suckers up, all right? You're not going to be pushing that Herald for plates. That's dead. You're not going to be pushing that Herald for a 40-minute turret. That's dead. What you can do is maybe set up the Herald for huge pushes in lanes later on, right? Maybe you can set up something where it's going to be a little bit more dynamic in terms of hitting into base, right? Charging into base tier 3s. Hopefully you've already taken these turrets, but you're going to have 2 extra minutes than what you're used to in terms of actually controlling the tempo of the mid game and transitioning while your laners are all looking to do stuff, right? That's the interesting aspect of this. Now, where Atakhan comes in to this philosophy here is you're going to have obviously these rose petals spawn. Oh, look at this, I already made them. Quite big though. You can already have these rose petals start to spawn in these two zones, right? Or whichever zone is the zone that actually sets up for 20 minutes. Because Herald spawns at 16, that cooldown will give you, if you don't take it at 16, obviously a lot of people don't, say you take it maybe at 18 minutes or so, this could be a very interesting priority creation for setting up for the Atakhan, right? So if Atakhan's roses on the top side here, maybe you're like, well, if I punch here, we can fall back, Say Kindred punches this one, maybe I can fall back here, and now we're going to have the Atakhan spawning. Alternatively, you can also opposite it and drop it here, where someone has to respect the crash from the Herald. Perhaps you get a really strong split pusher with TP up, and then you can go here, forcing their non-TP top laner or jungler or whatever to hold. This gives you numbered advantage over the Atakhan. So a lot of the principles that we use for Barons and Dragons and distractions of the Herald now will be used for Atakhan, but Atakhan is quite a strong thing to snack. And when these flowers become whichever Atakhan it is, again, I made them quite big. I really just quickly did them. You don't know where they're going to spawn necessarily. Which one you'll kind of know if you have a bloodthirsty game, they're going to spawn. But yeah, that for me is a really interesting thing in terms of how we set up for this 20-minute Atakhan, because I do believe, because the Baron at 25 now, this I do feel is going to be very heavily connected to the Atakhans, It's obviously 5 minutes later, but if you take the one that gives you all of the bonus stats from the dragons you've maybe snacked away, huge, right? And if you take the one that's like, hey, you guys aren't fighting them much, maybe I can give you an Akshan passive and some free gold for every fight. They're trying to incentivize you to fight. And in the lesser Akshan game, whichever one it is, let's just say it's this one, because he looks lesser, you're getting more gold with every team fight. So maybe you don't necessarily dominate this beforehand, but it might be a good idea to have a few team fights before the Baron, capitalize on that gold advantage you're not going to get from the team fights, and then now that Baron fight becomes really, really easy. So I think when they say that they're not worried about games going kind of longer than they are now, this is why. Because they're thinking a lot more for the snowball at the Baron moment. The Baron at 25 with the Atakhan presence, I feel is going to be nutty. And obviously, remember, you're going to pick up the roses here that give you adaptive force, roses spawning all over the map for people's dead corpses. There's a lot going on in terms of mid-game to late-game snowball. Even if the Herald is delayed, it's not going to matter as much, purely because the setup there feels a lot more free. The only thing we need to keep track of as junglers is that we might have more time for the grubbies. We have 2 extra minutes before the Herald spawns, and that dead time is the one that makes me very curious as to how we're going to play those 2 minutes out overall. Specifically, if we know, say, it's going to spawn bottom side here. You take these grubbies at, say, 14 because it was delayed. You got 2 minutes now. Use that to push turrets, use that to push turrets, use that to get in their face. Do not go farming and chilling. We're kind of forced now to go for the Herald at 14, right? Currently, now at 14 minutes, you go for the Herald. And then we can actually use that to punch our way through. We're not necessarily going to have to do that anymore. We don't have the tool anymore. So we have to find other ways to do it. And of course, the worst thing you could do often is that, they're doing Herald and you're just farming it up. But they come Herald, they punch it down to 14. Now your map is saggy and you're pushed in. And now you're sitting there at 50 minutes with a dark map, nothing until 20. What do? Well, Atakhan now gives you an out, right? Herald at 16 minutes, because it will be delayed, gives you some sort of out. So I'm very interested to see how we play through this all. Those are just some loose thoughts, but it will change junglers' priorities in terms of what we focus on, okay, and pay attention to. But the biggest thing, my friends, is going to be how we look about taking turrets and setting up for heralds. The map should be a bit more evolved from our perspective. That's our goal here as junglers, so that we can snack this baby up and ensure that we get this as well. Because if this is up, until 20 minutes and despawns at 20 minutes and Atakhan's down here, you might see some splits. I'm going to take the Herald. Okay, thanks for Atakhan, guys. Woo! There he is. Spawns. Happy days. So the macro is going to become really dynamic and interesting. This is what I think could happen. These are some things I think we should be thinking about. Obviously, I will update all of my channels and macro videos for the first time in 10 years because it's actually going to change how we think. However, that's not it, right? Early game jungle macro is also going to change, but not in any pathing ways, just in terms of how we react and prioritize to information and the gold we can get on the map. Let's look at that change now. So now we have a kind of idea of what's going to happen, in that grub phase to herald phase to baron phase of the game, changing our mid to late game macro, what we choose to focus on as junglers. They've also implemented, they will be implementing Feats of Strength here. This effectively is saying, hey, if you get First Blood, you no longer get bonus gold. If you get First Turret, you no longer get bonus gold. What's going to happen is here, you will have a 2 out of 3 goal, right? Best out of 3. You can get all 3, but like if you can get 2 out of 3, that's what we want to do. And the 3 things are get First Blood, get First Tower, and get 3 epic jungle monsters. The objective ping pong, right? Dragons, Herald, and any 3 Void Grubs. We want to control those things. Upon one team completing 2 of the 3 above feats, they'll have won the contest and will receive the Blessing of Noxus buff. There's a condition to this, hold on. The buff will immediately grant a small bonus to any tier 2 boots belonging to players on the feat winning team. This is retroactive, so you already have tier 2 boots. When you get feats, they'll get the bonus immediately. If you buy them later on, they'll get the bonus, so don't worry about changing up when you buy boots. Of course, at that particular stage here, you know, if you are able to get, I assume Drakes plus one Drake plus 2 Void Grubs, you should be absolutely fine. But of course, it's the first 3 epic jungle monsters. I don't know if this is definitely including Herald, because if that's the case, you're waiting till 60 minutes to get this buff, so you should have boots. Or will this work if you take 5-minute grubs, you know, 6-minute dragon, and then you go ahead and take like 10-minute grubs? Do you get it then? In which case, hey, that's pretty good, especially if you have booties from Cosmic Insight runes, and you're getting that double level up as well. After completing 2 legendary items, a player on the feat winning team can spend gold to upgrade their boots to tier 3. So you get a free boost, tier 2s, thumbs up, nice, cool. However, you also get the option to upgrade to shiny new boots. I don't know if they put an image somewhere of what they look like. I think there was something on their website's dying. But yeah, you get to go to tier 3 boots. Now, this will cost 750 gold. Effectively, you could look at having, you know, +5 armor, +5 movement speed. Those numbers will change. We have no idea what that is exactly going to look like. We don't know what new unique passives are going to look like. It's just an example. Tier 3 boots will have that added benefit though, but it will cost you 750 gold. So once you have 2 legendary items, once you've got 2 core items there, right? Do I then invest now in my 3rd item? Do I say, look, we're seeing this game as winnable. What if I just take the 750 and invest it here? Maybe I can then punch it down. Who knows? That'll depend on the numbers that they give us and which boots are more OP than others. But that's the huge thing about early game jungling. So we talked about the mid game macro and like sort of scaling to this particular point, whether you want, you know, voracious or ruinous, it doesn't really matter how you want to play that. If you're a good early game jungler, farming, scaling, cheesy, Lee Sin, Rek'Sai, Shaco, Karthus, doesn't matter. First Blood is not always in our hands, but it can be. So I'm thinking we might see a little bit of a resurgence with early First Blood ganking junglers or cheese level junglers, because already, boom, that's taken care of, right? If this happens against you, don't worry. If you play like a Karthus, as I said, or something like this, or Hecarim, don't worry. As long as you sequence well and ensure you get these, plus this with good pathing, you're going to be absolutely fine at getting this upgrade. But this is going to incentivize fusing early game agency to some capacity with the ability to really set up for the Atakhans. You want to have that advantage there because these are huge buffs, and I'd argue whoever gets this is going to get the Baron anyway. And if you can get this, you're probably setting yourself more likely to get these. So we've talked about the mid-game macro, late-game decision-making, but early game, do not forget that there are still things to fight for to set up better opportunities to get all of the juice later on. And this is what's going to be really, really interesting. I'm not sure First Blood should remain here, purely because that is so determined by which laners decide to go ham, which ones belong on Arkham Asylum, which junglers have 0 skill and just go level 2 ganking or invading. There's too much coin flip with First Blood in my opinion, but if they keep it this way, don't worry. We still have a lot of control to get 2 out of 3, and then of course get the bonus boots, plus the ability to upgrade to tier 3 boots. That will depend on your itemization and your gold investment. The rest of this, respawning Nexus turrets, slight changes to runes, which I think are terrible for domination, but I don't want to speak on those. Those are more likely to change and have less impact. Teleport can also go to wards again, and minions again, and plants again. Early game, there's a different mechanic with this one. Will affect how we play around lanes, but I'm not talking about that today because I want those to be finalized. There's a lot of back and forth about that, but these changes are coming through and they're going to be really interesting. So let me know in the comments what you think of the season. I think we're cooking a little bit here in terms of challenging junglers early game for our priorities and mid game for our macro. The game has become quite solved, and this should help solve as it were, a lot of the problems when it comes to staleness in snowballing games and playing from behind. And then, of course, get the bonus boots, plus the ability to upgrade to tier 3 boots. That will depend on your itemization and your gold investment. The rest of this, respawning Nexus turrets, slight changes to runes, which I think are terrible for domination, but I don't want to speak on those. Those are more likely to change and have less impact. Teleport can also go to wards again, and minions again, and plants again. Early game, there's a different mechanic with this one. Will affect how we play around lanes, but I'm not talking about that today because I want those to be finalized. There's a lot of back and forth about that, but these changes are coming through, and they're going to be really interesting. So let me know in the comments what you think of the season. I think we're at a cooking a little bit here in terms of challenging junglers early game for our priorities and mid game for our macro. The game has become quite solved, and this should help solve, as it were, a lot of the problems when it comes to staleness in snowballing games and playing from behind.